time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm here, as always, Austin Peterson. I'll be your host, and I'm joined by the best co-host in the business, Landon Mance, coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada, as usual. And today, we're actually going to test the powers of the internet because we're all three coming from three different locations. So Landon's in Las Vegas. I am in a suburb of Salt Lake City this week, in an Airbnb that swears to me they have very strong Wi-Fi. So we're going to hope that that's true. And then we've got Eric Stoffers, our guest, coming to us from Medellin, Colombia. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me again, guys. It's good to be back with you.
Yeah, we were just telling Daryl, our producer, that that you're the first guest that we've had come back so far. We've talked about having some other guests come back, and we just haven't done that. And I think you were guests like 3, 4, 5 pretty early on. So we're excited to kind of get an update from you. But before we jump into that, if you're listening to this show for the first time, Tycoons of Small Biz is a radio program and a podcast that's put together by small business owners for small business owners. And the intent is to highlight small businesses that are out there doing incredible things in our country and in our world. We truly believe that the small business owner is the backbone of the American economy. Landon and I are both small business owners. We own a business together. We own separate businesses separately from one another. And then we also have parents and grandparents that were entrepreneurs. And so we feel that the small business community really runs through our blood. And we're excited to host this program. We're right around 75 episodes, and we feel like we're finally hitting our stride and getting things going. So we know that since we had you on the program the last time, you've been on other podcasts. We're sure that they weren't nearly as good as ours, but we understand that we're not exclusive with you on the podcasting front, Eric, and we're okay with that.
Well, thanks for having me back. I'm always happy to be invited to all podcasts, and I'm definitely excited to be the first to return. So it's great on my end too. Thanks for having me again, guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for those of you who didn't, or for those of our listeners who didn't hear your first episode, let's start by telling a little bit about you personally, kind of where you grew up, and then jump into how you got your start with BioXcellerator and Bioscience America, and just we'll jump in from there.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm an Arizona native, which for those of you that aren't that familiar with Arizona, there's not that many natives. We are a big metropolis. I think we're maybe number 5 or 6 biggest city in the nation. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but we're a big metropolis of imports, mostly from the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest and places that probably don't have that great of a winter. And our winters are absolutely beautiful, but our summers are not. So I'm super happy to be in Medellin, Colombia right now, as you mentioned. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that, because that's the main location of my business. But, so I'm an Arizona native and born and raised. I went to college in a smaller, cooler climate up in Flagstaff, Arizona, which was about 2 hours from Phoenix, where I grew up. I studied hotel restaurant management and small business administration. After college, I mostly was in the restaurant business because that's where I cut my teeth from job number 1. I was a busboy at 15. I worked all the way through the restaurant, all through high school, college, and then thereafter did some traveling around the country, opening up new restaurants, and kept with the restaurant business at every single level, in every position. After that, I transitioned into real estate, and I found some success selling homes, and then moving into having portfolios of rental homes on my own. and putting together several successions of real estate funds of single family home rental portfolios, and ended up teaming up with a group that was doing it at a bigger scale than I was, taking that company public, where I was the CEO of that company. And that's where I had my first introduction to stem cell therapy. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a business guy, but I was very enamored by not only my first conversation, but my 10th and my 5th, and every little piece of self-education that was in between there regarding stem cell. I had a group that approached me to help them with some business endeavors and some international business development for their stem cell group. And when I found out what stem cell therapy could do, how many people it could help, and how it was literally helping now and not just the future of medicine, I ended up transitioning and starting a company called BioXcellerator, where we are an advanced stem cell company helping many, many people through stem cell therapy.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome journey. And I know that when we had you on, a year or so ago, we talked about how odd it was to go from, restaurants and hotels to then real estate, which isn't that big of a leap, right? But then go from real estate to stem cell treatment, that's a big leap, right?
Hugely,
yeah.
Astronomical. Yeah. And there's a huge learning curve. And I think if we end up talking about, my entrepreneurial prowess, which started long before the real estate business, but a lot of it has to do with the people that you surround yourself with. And I have brilliant people that are in this company, but it was a long learning curve for just a business guy, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, we talked to Dr. Halpert right before we went live. And so she's, from the medical standpoint, she's definitely the brains behind the operation. But, for our listeners and really for the general public, give us a little bit of background on, why you typically do this in Colombia, where things stand in the US, because obviously you guys do some research and some things in the US as well, but there are reasons that you're operating in Colombia. So kind of, let's start there by filling in the listenership as to why Colombia and what you're doing there.
Okay, yeah, great question. Because it's something that not even some of the best doctors in the United States are educated about, and that's the regulatory process in the United States. And first off, I want to say that when we're talking about these regulators like the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA is a fantastic organization. They're here to help the American people. They protect us. They have fantastic leadership. And Janet Woodcock, the current commissioner, former Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, all fantastic individuals. But what I would say is that their regulations relating to stem cell therapy are a bit antiquated. They're behind. They're just a little bit behind. They haven't caught up with the technology yet. Maybe that's no fault of their own. I'm not part of the inner workings of their board meetings. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, now knowing that in the scientific community, there is no debate that stem cell therapy is both safe and effective. And we're seeing it every day. We're treating patients, we're helping people every day. We're getting people out of chronic pain. And some of our patients would say that we've saved their life on some level. But so we know that in this community, there's no debate. Unfortunately, there's a lot of debate in the United States on whether or not this should be fully legal, and it's not illegal, it's just not fully defined. So even though my company, BioXcellerator, is an Arizona-based company, our corporate office is there, my home is there, we unfortunately have to take the highest level science, which is all we do, the best science with the best results, the safest, most effective science. We have to take that offshore to help people. And so that's what we did, knowing that there are other countries like Colombia that have taken a deeper dive and maybe had some more thorough conversations about helping people in advanced therapies. We are able to perform some of these therapies here where we might not be able to do it in the United States.
Yeah, so I've got a follow-up question to that, because it's definitely not exclusive to stem cell, right? I mean, I'm wearing glasses. I've been tested for LASIK and all those sorts of things. And, I have I guess a diagnosis of something that's called pellucid. And so I've got I've got an issue with my eyes that is progressively going to get worse, right? So I've got an astigmatism, and that typically means that inside of your eye, there's, kind of like a figure eight deal going on with your pupil or your iris. I don't remember which. And it usually goes up and down, but mine goes side to side, right? And so it can potentially lead to blindness at some point. Well, the LASIK surgeons that I met with said, there's a treatment that can fix this for you, but it's not approved in the United States. You'd have to go to Europe to get it done. So I know that it's not exclusive to stem cell. There are plenty of other things. So, and I know this is potentially just conjecture on your part, but why do you think that is the case in the United States? I know they're there to protect us, but why do you think we are maybe behind the curve a little bit from a technology standpoint on some of these things?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, some of it is certainly going to be conjecture. Like I said before, I'm not privy to the inner workings of the FDA or the Health and Human Services Code, lawyers who write the code. What I will tell you, and maybe I kind of turn the question back maybe to the audience to ask themselves, but we know now, because of COVID, we know that the FDA can fast track these technologies. We know that it doesn't have to take 20 years to get through the clinical trial process. We know that we can prove safety. Maybe effectiveness might take longer, but we know we can prove safety. So in that case, why can't we get something passed through when we know that it's safe? We know that it's effective for a lot of indications. And we've just seen it be done in record time over the last year or so with this pandemic. So, I would turn it back to the audience. One story that I'll tell that might help guide some of the people that are kind of on the fence, not understanding. To your point, Austin, is that it's not just stem cell therapy that people have to go offshore for. But we had one of our patients here in Medellin, Colombia, that was being treated with us. And he happened to be a type 1 diabetic, and he had run out of his insulin pens while he was here in Colombia. And so innocently, he went to a pharmacy and said, I need my insulin pens. Here's what I usually take. And he had an example of the exact pen. And the pharmacist gave him a bulk package of pens. And this individual was surprised because it was the exact same pens, the exact same company, the exact same quantity, but for a fraction of the cost. And I'm talking about a minor fraction. So it was like $68, whereas it usually costs him $800. Okay, so he innocently put this on Facebook and said, hey, look, friends, look what I've got a score. I got it for $68 here when I have to pay $800 in the States. Facebook shut down his account, banned him from talking about that, and would not let him get back on without not only taking down the post, but had a 2-week or whatever, a month or whatever it was, a couple of week sanction. So, I'm not against Facebook. Look, I've been on Facebook since day one. I still have an account. I love it. I can't contact my friends. And so this isn't about Facebook. It might be about the people that are advertising on Facebook, because I can't do it. I can't do it with my company. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question, but those are hopefully some stories that help frame what the possibilities might be.
So, wow, that's interesting. So maybe just in a further effort to help frame this, Eric, when I think about stem cell therapy, I envision this, big machine arm shooting down this laser into someone's spine, and just this really high tech, futuristic procedure. And that's probably because I really don't have a clue as to what the actual procedure is. But tell us, just at the base level, Eric, like what exactly is stem cell therapy? What includes, what's included in the actual process, in the procedure, so that we can get some better context there, if you would.
Yeah, perfect. So, it is, and I've used this term already in this podcast, it is some of the most advanced scientific technology on the planet right now. It doesn't have anything to do with lasers, I'm sorry to report, but that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we'll put that in our practice at some point. Who knows what the future holds, but no, it is an advanced therapy, but it is a science and it's not necessarily medicine, but it's the combination of that science and that medicine coming together. So that's, another reason why it's very important to have a clinic that has both the science and the brilliant medical doctors, as you pointed out. Dr. Halpert is one of the brilliant chief medical officers we have at the company. But to get back to your question, stem cells are the master cell in our bodies. You have them, I have them, everybody has them. They're essentially the building blocks of life. They're a cell that is able to self-replicate and continue to divide over time. But as we get older, as almost everything in life, as we get older, kind of slows down. And the replication of those cells, those stem cells, also slow down. So what our company is able to do is essentially promote the expansion and the replication of those cells to help your body with immunity. So it helps promote and modulate the immune system. It helps promote healing. It helps promote regeneration. And we do that by using an outside source of some of the most pure, potent, and safe stem cells, which are not to be confused with embryonic stem cells, which is something that, people that are just not aware of how far the technology has advanced, it's just a misnomer. So nobody really in the community is using embryonic stem cells anymore. So there's really no controversy surrounded the sourcing of our stem cells, but we get them from the umbilical cord. So a healthy mom and a healthy baby go home and live healthy lives together. The mom donates that cord to a scientific company like ours, and we're able to help hundreds, if not thousands of people just from that single cord by taking those fresh, pure, potent, safe stem cells from the umbilical cord, doing some, high-level scientific work to that, and then injecting them into, people that are fighting disease or chronic pain or orthopedic issues or even neurological conditions.
So
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna ask, is the umbilical cord, so people will actually donate those to your company, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, are there other are there other organs or other parts of the body where you can obtain these, or is it just solely in the umbilical cord?
Yeah, good question, Landon. So yeah, there are other sources for these stem cells. The specific stem cells that we use are mesenchymal stem cells. You may hear them referred to as mesenchymal stem cells, depends on what part of the world you're from. But these mesenchymal stem cells are, some of the most pure, potent for what we're trying to treat, but they can be found at different sources. We get them from the best source. So like I said before, the most pure, the most potent, the most effective, the safest. However, you can get them from your own body. So you can get them from either adipose tissue, which is essentially fat deposits around your body, or you can get them from bone marrow. And both of those procedures, unfortunately, are somewhat invasive. So you'd either have to have a liposuction or puncture your iliac crest to suck out some bone marrow. So that part isn't fun. But the truth is that, those cells have also been exposed to your environment, your body, for however old you are. And if you're needing stem cell therapy, most likely, unless you're coming to us for longevity, which we have a lot of patients that do that just for general health and longevity. But unless you're coming to us for just longevity, most likely you're trying to combat some type of ailment or degeneration. And in that case, the cells in your body have already been experiencing degeneration and trying to fight that and combat either that chronic pain or neurological condition or autoimmune disease, and they have not been successful. So using your own stem cells is, in that case, for us, it's just not the most effective way to go about the treatment.
Yeah. So one of the ailments that you guys treat pretty regularly, and I think the general public is aware of this terminology now, mainly because of the NFL. But CTE is way more common in our military veterans, right? So talk to us a little bit about what you guys are doing specifically with CTE and with our military veterans, because as you know from being on the show and just knowing Landon and I individually, we're big supporters of veterans. And so we'd love to hear about what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, it's something that's close to my heart. I wasn't a military guy. I have a military family. But one of the things that we see, and look, the veterans, not only in the USA, but all over the world, the veterans and their families have done so much to sacrifice for our great country and for many others. And so, I'm really pleased to have my company, BioXcellerator, be in a position where we can help give back. And we're doing that through pioneering a potential treatment for CTE. I don't want to overstate the facts. The truth is that CTE is so new, vastly misdiagnosed and misunderstood. We don't know if it's going to be an effective treatment. We think it is because it seems to have some results in the treatment of traumatic brain injury, which is essentially the same in maybe a more mild case with CTE. But back to your point, yeah, so our veterans are experiencing mild concussions, sometimes on a daily basis, and that's without even seeing combat. These guys are out there training with, mortars and just big caliber rounds, and doing it very often, maybe every day, several times a week, whatever it is. And that's mild concussions every time, they're firing. And that's, again, setting aside any combat, but God forbid these guys that are seeing real action, they're experiencing a lot of concussions, which, we know because of the NFL, as you guys pointed out, has gained a lot of attention because of CTE. And, these guys are experiencing symptoms that mimic PTSD too. So they're being misdiagnosed as just, they saw some action. It's PTSD. It's a psychological condition, which automatically kicks them out of a lot of medical programs and gets them into a psychological program, which sometimes they need the combination of both. And so our company is pioneering a technique with stem cell therapy that we do for other neurological conditions. And it's an intrathecal application of mesenchymal stem cells, which passes the blood-brain barrier because it's going into the spinal column. And it seems to be something that's effective with other indications. So our hope is that over the long term, we will help some of these folks with CTE. A lot of our athletes are getting this treatment right now. We have a lot of veterans that are doing it. We are actually, in a position to where we're giving some of these treatments to veteran organizations that send us candidates, that are in the military in need of our services.
Yeah, so a couple follow-ups to that. One, you used a term that I'm not familiar with, intrathecal. I'm not sure what that means. So maybe you can define that first.
Yeah, it's a slightly more invasive procedure than our other typical interarticular, intramuscular applications. But basically, intrathecal is a spinal column injection, which helps pass the stem cells through the blood-brain barrier. Now, that might sound, a lot more invasive to you and I or people not in the medical profession, but the truth is this is done every day. It's the same type of procedure that women get when they're getting an epidural. So, it's not dangerous, it's safe, it's something that we do very effectively. But what I would say is that, there may be other clinics out there that are also doing this, but it's very important to have the right specialist doing this. So we have 2 neurosurgeons that are on our staff that do these procedures. We don't have general doctors doing them. We don't have anybody that is, maybe not specifically trained for this. But it is, it's very safe and it's effective in passing the blood-brain barrier, which is important.
Gotcha. And then the last question, and you may or may not know the answer to this off the top of your head, but my understanding is for CTE to truly be diagnosed, it's post-mortem, right? It's slicing the brain open at that point to verify that that's the case. Do you know of anything that is out there today that's helping it to be diagnosed earlier to know for sure that's what it is compared to any other diagnosis?
Yeah, you're absolutely right that there's no true diagnosis until post-mortem. But what I think some of the people that are studying this field very closely, like the Almond clinics that do brain mapping and imaging, and other organizations that are focusing in on this, they start seeing some of the symptoms, as I was mentioning, that mimic things like PTSD. So not just depression, but light sensitivity, dizziness, all sorts of specific indications that would kind of give you an idea that it's more of a neurological condition. but the truth is no, we can't really diagnose it. So that's why I was, pretty specific about saying we don't know if it's a treatment because we can't even diagnose it really until post-mortem. So the thought behind it, the science behind it, is that we know that other neurological conditions or traumatic brain injury can see positive outcomes with stem cell. So our hope is that because CT is mimicking a lot of those symptoms, that it's on the same level. But it's too soon to tell, to be honest.
Gotcha.
So, Eric, when you say positive outcomes, help us understand what that means, and maybe as you lead into that answer, you could tell us about what some of the people that are coming out and visiting your clinic out there, maybe just share with us a couple of ailments or reasons or issues that people are dealing with that would want to have them come out and visit you out there. Maybe you can just kind of transition into the former from that.
Okay. Yeah. So the good thing about stem cell therapy is that it has a lot of benefit for many indications. So we can treat effectively many autoimmune diseases. We can treat neurological conditions, as I mentioned before. But I would say what we treat the most and what we specialize in, maybe it's something that sets us apart from other clinics globally, is orthopedic issues, but specifically spine and disc issues. Again, we have top level neurosurgeons that specialize in spine, so we're able to do that, whereas I think a lot of other clinics are not. But so I would say that that's what we specialize in. We are fortunate to have a lot of traction in the professional athlete universe, essentially, and that it crosses all sports. So we have, guys that are current NFL players. We have former guys like Jim McMahon, who we've talked about maybe on the last podcast. We have essentially anybody who either has a current belt, a championship belt in the UFC or Bellator, or has been a runner-up or is in the top 5 or 10. Those are pretty much our patients. You can throw a rock and hit one of our patients. So, high impact athletes like NFL and UFC, those guys come to us. We're fortunate to have a lot of success treating those type of orthopedic issues for high level athletes. But really the bulk of our patients are the baby boomers, the aging population, regular guys like you and me that maybe want to stay out on the golf course, without having a nagging hip issue or a knee, maybe want to be out there playing tennis, or, guys that just want to keep playing with their kids, and don't want to feel like a grandpa instead of a dad. So those are, the bulk of our patients. But, again, what we specialize in, I think, is that other clinics don't, is the spine and disc treatments.
All right. So I wanted to say that we've just come through a worldwide pandemic, but we're definitely not all the way through yet. We keep seeing spikes and, whatever, but I think the worst part of it is over, and maybe I should knock on some wood to make sure that that's actually the case. But, with what you guys do in the medical field, specifically being, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a cosmetic surgery or whatever the term is that I'm thinking of there, where elective, it's an elective type of a procedure that's done. A lot of the times I'm guessing it's not covered by insurance and so forth. And so we've had conversations about this. So I know that early on, this had a pretty big effect on your business. I'd love to hear you talk through, what you did during that period of time that brought you to where you are today, because we also know that you have plans for expansion that are coming up, pretty aggressive expansion plans. So talk to us about how you came through that to where, really it was white knuckling it there for a little bit to now where you are and what the plans are for the future.
Okay. Yeah. So digging into the business part, and especially coming into, February and March of, what was that, 19, when COVID was, starting to really be a global pandemic and shut down the globe. But there was some white knuckle moments for sure. You could, there's many other ways we could describe that that wouldn't be appropriate. But yeah, it was one of those tough, tough reflections of our business, because there was a major problem in the sense that we are, as you mentioned, somewhat of an elective surgery, because a lot of the most all of our treatments are not covered by insurance, unfortunately, not yet. But so people have to pay a lot of money out of pocket. They have to travel to Medellin, Colombia. Unfortunately, Medellin has not had the best reputation with U.S. U.S. citizens because of what we see on Netflix and all the true parts of the history here, which are 30 years ago and long in our rearview mirror for those of us that know and love Colombia. But so you had to travel, which was now shut down because of the pandemic. You had to spend a lot of money out of pocket with really no guarantee, like any other medical treatment on the planet, but there's still no guarantee that you're just going to have the best results and it's going to be fixed, just like surgery, just like drugs, just like any other medical treatment. But so that, that made people push a pause button, even on their chronic pain. People that were suffering and had finally made the mental decision to not suffer anymore and try something that was elective and experimental, like stem cell therapy. And that made them push the pause button. So that affected our business dramatically. We were essentially shut down for 6 months out of that 2019 year. Luckily, we had built enough credibility and reputation in the space to where people knew that we weren't a fly-by-night organization like some of the other stem cell companies you see popping up. And there were people that they trusted, either in the medical community or maybe some of the professional athletes that they saw on our website or YouTube channel, that gave our patients some ability to trust our company and go ahead and get on our schedule and wait 6 months until we opened. And we were very fortunate for that. I'm blessed to have that be a part of my business, because I know there's a lot of businesses out there that didn't have that same fate and unfortunately didn't make it through COVID. But I'll also put a lot of that back onto our staff and who we are, as from a cultural standpoint. We have some of the most brilliant doctors on the planet, some of the best medical practitioners, whether it's the nurses or technicians or our PhDs in the laboratory or our master level technicians, all the way down to our receptionist is, we call each other BioX family, but it's also, that's including our patients. And so I think we've kind of built a reputation of being, very caring, much more so than you would see in the typical doctor's office clinic setting in the United States. And so I think that bought us a lot of credibility, I guess, or just allowed us to stay in business when some companies didn't. So luckily here we are, we're doing very well. And yeah, as you mentioned, we're expanding pretty rapidly because we want to help as many people as possible.
So Eric, just before we get into talking a little bit more about your expansion plans, because we certainly want to hear about that. Speaking of your guys' reputation, we know that what you guys are doing, it's not just the procedure. You guys really are creating an experience for people that come out and that engage your guys' company to do stem cells. So talk to us a little bit about that and how you really create this world-class experience for these people that are coming out and doing these procedures with you guys.
Another great point. I appreciate you bringing it up because I should have earlier. I guess I'm not as good of a sales guy as I used to be, but thank you for helping me there. So I mean, the point that you're making is that it's maybe not like other stem cell companies that just say, yeah, come on down to Mexico or Tijuana or whatever, and we'll inject you and then we'll put you back on the plane. This is an experience. It is, a lot of our patients consider it a wellness vacation. We have people that have shot videos calling this a wellness vacation. We have celebrities that have called this breaking the code to recovery on their wellness vacation. So it is that we try to encompass an experience, not just injecting stem cells. So we do other ancillary and supportive therapies leading up well before the trip, and then also continuing after, but certainly during the trip. So while people are here in Colombia, they are going to be, white glove service taken from the airport into our hotel. I call it a medical tourism compound, because essentially as you arrive to the hotel, you never have to leave the same roof. If you don't want to, if you're not adventurous, you can go right from the hotel into a 5-star mall that has every amenity, pretty much every store that you would ever need to shop at. If you forgot, a toothbrush to needing to buy a whole new wardrobe, it's at your fingertips and disposal. And then it has, 50 or more than 50 of some of the better restaurants here in Medellin. It's not like a typical food court that you would see in the United States. These are good high-end restaurants. And then that goes directly into our clinic. So the medical tourism compound is an experience in and of itself, but then we also add and layer in some of the supportive therapies like bioregulatory medication to pre-treat people's bodies and get their proliferation of cells already started before we start injecting higher doses of stem cells. And we also help prepare their bodies for those injections of large injections of stem cells. We also do things like hyperbaric chamber, and we're continuously adding to the protocol. So there's a nutrition program, there's all these other ancillary and supportive therapies. And on top of that, we have it be kind of a wellness vacation experience. So you'll go to a high-end spa here in the hotel and have a deep tissue massage, or depending on whether or not they're an athlete or what type of ailment they're being treated for, that will dictate what kind of massage they'll get. But then there's also some trips in and around Medellin that we take our patients to, the more adventurous patients, and it's super safe here. But some people just don't want to leave the hotel, and that's okay too. But yeah, so we have it as more of an experience and a wellness vacation than just a therapy. And the truth is that my last point on that subject is that the truth is a lot of people, after they've done it once, they want to continue to come back, because it's a vacation destination that, let's be honest, people don't usually choose. It's not on the top of their bucket list to come to Medellin for a vacation. But once you get here and you see that the climate is perfect, I mean, literally all year round, it's 72 to 82 degrees. So the city's beautiful. It's very clean. The people are very welcoming. And there's really cool things to do around the city. So it is a vacation destination, actually. And our patients love that about our experience. And you can do it for the same price as getting stem cell in the States, higher level stem cell vacation experience for about the same cost.
Yeah. Well, I've never been to Colombia, but I know people that have traveled there, and the consensus seems to be that Colombia is just an absolutely incredible, beautiful place to visit with, like you mentioned, some of the friendliest people that you'll ever meet. I've been to some neighboring countries, but I've never actually been to Colombia. But yeah, it's on my list for sure. So, all right, so let's change gears just a bit. You've got plans to expand, and typically when a company is expanding, it is a result of demand, right? So, which translates to your company's probably doing okay. So, talk to us a little bit about just where the company has gone in the last 18 months, and then talk to us about what your expansions plans looked like and where are you going and why, and certainly speak to your expansion plans when it comes to the US, because we're all living here, so we're curious about what that looks like.
So I guess going back to what it's like to be an entrepreneur, it's typically like getting slapped in the face a couple times a week, if not every day, but it's problem solving, right? And so we are fortunate right now to be solving a problem of demand. And I'm blessed to be in that position. So right now our clinic is booked up through March. And that is a problem, because we have people right now that need our services right now, that are in chronic pain, that are finally educating themselves on stem cell. They're finding out that the stuff in the United States is probably not going to be good enough for them. And so they know they have to come to a company like mine. And there's very few of us out here in the world right now that are doing the high level science We're not the only clinic, but there's a few, not many. And so there's a lot of demand for this high level science, and we're fortunate enough to be in that position, as you point out. We are trying to solve that problem. We saw that coming and have been building out a new facility here in Medellin that's going to give us about quadruple the space. So, we hope that that will satisfy some of the demand in the short term, and, not have people that are deciding to go to another company, because our wait list is too long. But that is a short-term fix. So, we are also in negotiations with other local either investors or also government entities, especially the regulatory entities in countries in the Middle East and Australia and Europe. Really, everybody needs this. And so we have a lot of people that are contacting us wanting to put a BioXcellerator in their country, to help their people out. So, we're fortunate to be in those type of negotiations, but also to your question, the US, the citizens of the US that aren't adventurous enough, can't afford it, don't have access to it, or the ability to travel to a place like Colombia, which, by the way, is only 3 hours from Miami. So it's not a terrible trip, but, a lot of our patients are unfortunately not in good shape. So sometimes travel is not really available. So we do have a model that we are going to be rolling out in 2022 called BioX Health. Most likely the first location is going to be in Scottsdale, Arizona, with a couple others probably right behind it. That's going to allow our patients, our local patients, to start some of those pre-treatment therapies that we, kind of just started discussing as a part of our overall protocol, our ancillary and supportive therapies. And, I think that will be at least a good start to penetrating the US. Unfortunately, we are still going to be in the same position from a regulatory standpoint where, we can't do the highest level science in the United States until the FDA gives us the thumbs up.
So just before Austin jumps back in here, so just so we understand what that means. Now, because it's not FDA approved, that means that you cannot do it at all, or that just means that people will shy away from it too much because it's not FDA approved? Or just help us understand what that means in regards to your business.
Okay, yeah, let's dig into it because there's a lot there to unpack. Right now, the FDA, under a Health and Human Services Code, and I believe it's Part 1271, but don't quote me on that, but it's a Health and Human Services Code that was put into act, maybe 30 plus years ago, when bone marrow transplants were something that were very effective, especially in the treatment of, cancers, blood-related cancers and that kind of thing. So that in that regulation, it says that you can, and this is a regulation that oversees cellular-based compounds and tissues and tissue transfer. And so within that code, you are able to do within the same surgical procedure a tissue transfer or cellular transfer without what they're calling more than minor manipulation. And without defining that term minor manipulation, great high-level scientific organizations like ours we don't know what that means, number one. But the truth is that the science has advanced so far past anything that I think anybody reasonable could consider to be minor. Then that leaves us a lot of gray area. Now, there are companies in the United States that are playing right in that gray area, and they're going for it. Now, they're not doing the highest level science. They're doing the bone marrow and the adipose extractions, which are essentially just repurposing your own old deficient cells and seeing results. By the way, that doesn't mean that it's I'm not saying that snake oil, I'm not saying that they're not getting results, but it's typically results for people that haven't really experienced major degeneration or major autoimmune disease or major neurological conditions. We kind of call it stem cell light. Because it is stem cell, it does work, it has some efficacy. But, if you're really, really looking for the highest level results, you're going to have to go into, more high level organizations like ours, where they do things like culture expanding the stem cells, which is essentially purifying and manipulating and multiplying those cells to be hundreds and millions of times more effective than if we were just to repurpose your cells. But there's another thing that's happening in the US where there are great laboratories that are doing great scientific work in stem cell therapy, maybe even using mesenchymal stem cells from the wart and jelly umbilical cord like we do. The problem is that if that laboratory is not connected and functioning with that same application process, so the doctors and the scientists working together in conjunction, then there's a disconnect. There's a major disconnect in between those two modalities. And when that great laboratory sends their potentially great cells all the way over across the city or across the state or across the country to great doctors, there's a lot that happens in between that shipping process, and not just the logistics, but there's many pieces of the scientific protocol that have to go perfectly for those cells to be viable. And when they're in control, when they're being controlled by FedEx or or people that are not PhDs in microbiology or maybe even just a receptionist in the medical doctor's office and not being put in the storage, the freezing facility perfectly, not being reactivated with the right reagents perfectly. There's just so many places that things go wrong, that in most of the community's testing of this process, most of the cells are not viable by the time they actually get applied to the patient. So right now, I agree with the FDA. There needs to be a lot of regulation, a lot of oversight, a lot more definition into this industry. But right now, there's a lot of gray area.
One last question. Any insight to when, that they could make any meaningful progress on this?
The good news is that Congress and the FDA seem to be agreeing that there needs to be some type of legislation that allows things like compassionate use, which is something that's legitimate and available now. So people at the end of life, people that have tried everything first and they're essentially reaching a death sentence stage, can try things like stem cell therapy legally in the United States. But in most cases, it's not available to most people. So the legislation that has been passed recently is the 21st Century Cures Act, and that allows maybe a fast track to some regenerative medicine protocols. But the truth is that we're still a long way away. So my insight is that it's not anytime soon, because I think first we're going to have to clear out the field of potential bad actors, and some of them are just not understanding that they're doing things inappropriately. They just, doctors are not scientists and scientists are not doctors, and if they're not communicating perfectly, then the right hand isn't talking to the left.
Insert call to action here, I would say, right? So we were talking about the FDA and their involvement and the approval process and knowing that it can be fast tracked. But the way our country works, not saying it's right or wrong, but there's lobbyists that are typically out there lobbying for certain things in different industries, right? Now, your industry, by all accounts, is not humongous like a lot of industries out there. So, what's in place, if anything, to make sure that this is in front of the right people who ultimately can push this forward from a fast track standpoint?
I would love if some of the people in our industry, some of my colleagues or even some of our competitors, if we could get together and, start working together and being stronger together, I think there's an argument to be made that we could start taking on some of these battles. But the truth is that our industry, as you point out, is at its infancy. We are small. We're mostly in this business to help people, and that's our focus. And luckily we do it every day, and we're very happy doing it. The best part of my day is when patients call me or text me or somebody in our organization and are crying and thanking us for saving their family member or themselves. And so that keeps me busy enough and focused enough to continue growing my business and focusing on the business and not getting too far sidetracked on the entire industry. I would love to help the industry, but as you point out, there are lobbyists that are being paid millions, if not hundreds of millions, tens of millions of dollars for big companies that I can't compete with, that I'll never compete with, that are lobbying, in some cases for great reason. Again, pharmaceuticals are miracles. They're necessary. Drugs and surgery are necessary. But, I would argue that they shouldn't always be the first thing prescribed. Maybe a last resort in some cases. But those are, again, those aren't my battles to pick. So.
Yeah, I think it's tough, as somebody who does what you do and an organization like you guys have that is so passionate about helping people, but you can only do what you can do, right? I mean, we all know that the fraction of the population that can travel to Medellin, that can pay the fees that have to be paid to be able to have it done, whether they can do it from a financial standpoint or from a health standpoint to get to Medellin, compared to if you had one right down the street from where they live, you'd be able to help more people, right? I mean, we're all in business. We're all trying to make money as well. And, whether it's provide a return to investors or our own pockets or whatever the case may be. But at the heart of it, and Landon and I know this because we know you personally, at the heart of it, it's about helping people who are in chronic pain or who have other things going on inside of their bodies that this treatment can help.
Yeah, I go back. We haven't even talked about our most severe patients, but we help spinal cord injury patients, and so typically these are people that have been living a full and fruitful and normal life, and have had some major trauma. Now, this isn't all the cases, but this is a lot. Some major trauma that immediately changes their life forever, where they're now bound to a wheelchair. A lot of them are quadriplegics, paraplegics, whatever. But these are people that are in a severe state for many, many reasons. And we are able to change their lives dramatically. Now, I'm not saying we're getting people out there running marathons or anything like that. But what I will say is that these people go from, like I said, a regular life to something where they're bound to this wheelchair. So now they're prisoners in their own body, but they want some level of dignity still. And a lot of times we can give that to them by stem cell therapy, allowing them, changing their ability to control their bowel and their bladder control. So now they don't have to have 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week care and somebody going into the restroom with them every time they have to go. We have a patient named Dustin Bunch, who was a quadriplegic because he dove off his boat like he did it every day or every year for 20 years. And the lake happened to be shallow this year, and he suffered a spinal cord injury and was a quadriplegic. During his first trip here to Medellin, I happened to be here at the time and was speaking with him and his family. And he said, I have a young daughter. All I wish is that I could hold her again and, not have any contact with her. And so after 3 or 4 treatments, we now have Dustin out there moving his hands, holding his daughter, eating by himself, going to the bathroom by himself, helping transition, around in his chair, driving his chair now instead of driving it with his mouth. So he's got a level of dignity that he didn't have before. And there's many, many, many patients like this around the world that are around, in the United States that can't travel to Medellin. They're too severe, or they don't have the wherewithal. And that's just one small sector of people that we can help if this was legal in the US. And I would love for that to be the case, but it's just not.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That I think that's the hardest part, right? And as the industry grows, I think you'll have more opportunities, but it's tough for you as the CEO of this company to sit there and wonder, what can I do to get more involved to help push this industry forward as a whole? You know, with what Landon and I do for a living, we're part of associations that lobby on behalf of our industry, right? And we go and we sit in meetings with other people who are technically our competitors, right? But we're talking about moving the industry forward, which is exactly what you want to do, and what really kind of needs to happen in many, if not all, industries.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, there's some great people in this industry. You know, we consider ourselves pioneers, and we are, but there have been people ahead of us that are doing a good job and have made some headway in, you know, talking to the right people in government. It's just, it's an uphill battle, and there's a lot of factions fighting against us for, in my opinion, not great reasons.
Do you think that stems originally from the embryonic stem cell argument that was out there, and people, you know, being up in arms about that and thinking that it's, you know, a moral issue?
I mean, that plays into it in the sense that, you know, in the early 2000s with George Bush, and, you know, him making some speeches specifically about the sourcing of stem cells and pointing towards some unethical sourcing of embryonic stem cells. You know, that certainly got people that are, you know, just watching the news and haven't educated themselves about it since 2000. You know, that might stick in people's head, but, you know, the truth is that anybody that you know, wants to educate themselves on about it, it would take 2 seconds to clear that up. So, you know, the short answer is yes, you're probably right. That had something to do with it, but not in the scientific community. No, that actually was a good thing for us. It took what, you know, people were focusing on, which was embryonic stem cells, and moved into what we found to be a more pure, potent, safe stem cell to use, like the mesenchymal stem cell.
Cool. All right, well, we're coming up to the end here, and I know that you guys are very active on social media, YouTube channel, that sort of thing. So let's tell the audience where they can find out more about stem cell treatment in general and BioXcellerator. Yeah,
very cool. So our website is bioxcelerator.com. It's BIOX, and then Xcelerator, BioXcellerator. But it's right back there if you can't see it. But we have a really good YouTube presence, Instagram presence. You can see a lot of our testimonials on bioxmen.org, and then all over YouTube and also social media platforms. So I would encourage you to check us out. If it's not our company, then, you know, stem cell therapy is great for a lot of indications. So, you know, thanks for the opportunity to get in front of your audience, and anything we can do to help, we'll certainly try to do it for your patients or for your audience.
Well, clearly, Eric, what you're doing is working, because you look about 5 to 8 years younger than you did 16 months ago. So, well, hey, Eric, we really appreciate you coming back on. It's really cool to just track and see the progress that you guys are making, and we're rooting for you. We hope that you're able to set up shop officially and offer those treatments here in the U.S. Sometime in the near future. And yeah, let's have you on a third time next year.
Good. I'm ready to be the first to be the third. So
right on.
I thought Landon was going to take that opportunity to point out the fact that I'm 13 days older than you, and I look about 13 years older than you. So
I don't know about that. It's I promise you I'm not using a filter. I appreciate you guys are making me blush, but you know, I'll take it. I'll take the compliments at my age all day long.
All right. One final wrap-up question, Eric. Can a bald man partake in stem cell therapy to regrow his hair?
So now you're just being mean to Austin, and I know this because we talked about it before. We have a lot of our patients. So, you know, a lot of our professional athletes come down here for an orthopedic treatment, but their wives end up doing face and hair. And I'll be honest, I've done some of that myself. But so face and hair is an effective treatment, but there's a caveat. You have to have a hair follicle left to regrow. And so the term bald, if you get to the shiny bald state where there's no follicle left, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah. All right.
Is
All
that,
right.
well, I guess there is a little shine up there, isn't there?
All right, Eric. Well, thanks again for coming on, man. Really enjoyed the follow-up conversation. And yeah, we look forward to tracking your continued success.
Thanks for everything you guys do for our company already, and thanks for putting me in front of your audience. I appreciate it. Good seeing you guys again.
You too. You're welcome.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business Radio X and your favorite podcast platform.